In the hollers and the hills where the shadows play, whispers of the wild lead our minds astray. Is a panther really screaming? Does a raven tell lies? Or chasing down the truth under a moonlit sky? Appalachian animal mythbusters, we're on the trail, separating the fact from a tall tale. With a fiddle's keen cry and a banjo's pluck, we'll crack the code of that mountain love. Legends run deep, but science runs true. Appalachian mythbusters coming through.
Hello, and thank you for joining us for an extra special episode of the Podcast Aquatic, the official podcast of the Tennessee Aquarium. This being spooky season here in southern Appalachia, I thought it would be kind of fun to bring in one of our Appalachian residents who has a deep history in this part of the world, as do I, to talk about some animal myths that you hear if you live here, and then bring in some of our experts in-house to gently debunk, or in some cases actually weirdly kind of confirm those myths with science and actual data. And before I get too into this, I want to introduce Rachel Thayer, who is our assistant curator of fishes. Rachel, you've been on the show several times at this point, but welcome back.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Normally, we bring you in to talk about fish and animals, but today we're really kind of talking about just where you were born. Mm-hmm. So, since we're going to be talking about this being Appalachian animal myths, why don't we go ahead and get your credentials? Where were you born? Where'd you grow up? And how long and how deep are your family's roots here in Appalachia?
Ooh, buddy. I was born in Bristol on the Tennessee side, which is where the hospital was when I was born. But I grew up on the Virginia side.
So you're Tennessean then?
Well, okay, fine. No, I'm a daughter of the Commonwealth. Thank you very much. So I grew up in Bristol, Virginia. I went to college at Virginia Tech for a couple years, and then I finished at NC State, so over in North Carolina, not too far away, but definitely in the Piedmont. I could tell I wasn't in the mountains anymore. And then I've moved around a bit since then in my professional adult career, and then I moved back to Chattanooga about 13 years ago, I think, actually. Yeah, something like that. So my family immigrated to Appalachia before the Revolutionary War from various European countries. So we have, family history and records of people in our family moving into the Washington County, Virginia area. Mm-hmm. In the late 1700s, about 1760 or so. And that's the beginning of my family story.
You stuck around.
Yeah.
Well, very, very similar story for me. I grew up in Knoxville, which is south of Bristol, southwest of Bristol. But my family has equally deep roots going back to the 1700s, I think maybe even the late 1600s, but not necessarily in Appalachia before the 1700s. So the western North Carolina, southeast Kentucky, western Virginia.
It's the region.
Yeah. I mean, East Tennessee, obviously. So I had very similar trajectory, I guess, for my life as yours, except for I didn't go out of state. I went to school in Middle Tennessee, south of Nashville, which also felt very... Did it feel weird to you? Did you notice the absence of mountains the way that I did?
Yeah, you can see way too far away. I didn't like that.
The horizon should not be so flat.
No, I should be encircled by mountains, hills at least.
I do think it's important to note that even though we're going to be talking about animal myths today with you and I, as well as some of the guests I mentioned earlier from the rest of the staff, we are not going to be dipping into cryptozoology. So there will be no discussion really of cryptids. If you're looking for information about Bigfoot, there are a lot of histories of sightings of Bigfoot in this part of the world. Mm-hmm. There's a big industry down in North Georgia for people going out on hunts for Bigfoot. So that is part of the culture here, but is not going to be a component of the discussion after this disclaimer that I have just said. So I'm sorry to disappoint those of you who were hoping for this to be more of a fringe topic. Okay, so the Appalachian Mountains are some of the oldest mountains on Earth. Very, very proud of that.
Very.
Hundreds of millions of years old, possibly more than a billion years old. Kind of depends on what site you look at, but among the oldest mountains on Earth. And it is very difficult. You and I were talking before the mic turned on about when you are out in those woods, there is a pervasive sense of that age that kind of envelops you and surrounds you. And it feels there's just an age to it.
Yeah.
I don't know how to describe it.
You just feel like you're walking through an ancient place. And it is true that those rocks that make up the mountains are older than bones. They existed before animals with bones. So it's pretty creepy out there. You can get spooked pretty easily.
It is exceptionally easy to let yourself get the heebie-jeebies out in the woods. And even if you're forearmed with a whole lot of science and a lot of experience working with animals and just knowledge of modern day scientific understanding of the world, something about you gets that sort of primal uneasiness. Even though I love to be out in the woods and I love Appalachia, there are parts of being out in Appalachia that are just a little bit unnerving.
There's a lot of sounds that you maybe don't know the source of that'll catch you by surprise when you're hiking, especially if you're in the woods by yourself and you're like, oh God.
Yes. And there is a lot of, speaking of being out in the woods by yourself, there's a lot of wisdom and old wives' tales and tall tales that have led to a lot of admonitions when you're growing up in Appalachia about certain ways you're supposed to behave in the woods. So what do you remember growing up about being Appalachian and being out in the woods, and what were your relatives and neighbors telling you about things that you might see, things you shouldn't do while you're out and about in the hills and mountains of Appalachia?
Well, my dad is a practical man still, but as a dad, he was also very practical in the sense of teaching us, which plants to watch out for, poison ivy and such. And if you're, walking through the woods every now and then, turn around so you can see what it looks like when you walk back, so you don't get lost and, those kinds of things. But I definitely have also heard, if you're out in the woods and you heard something, no, you didn't.
Yeah.
If you think you saw something, no, you didn't.
You didn't. And for the love of God, do not investigate whatever it was that you think you saw or heard.
If you heard somebody call your voice, don't answer.
Yes. Yes. Don't respond to your voice being called. Do not whistle in the woods is another one that I was told.
Oh, yeah. Don't whistle in the woods. Man, that's a hard one, though. Okay, I'll just sing.
Yeah. Yeah, just Snow White your way through the woods, I guess. Yeah, and the other one, and this is hard to do, especially if you're on a trail that's only going in one direction, but don't come back the same way that you went because the spirits will follow you home. That's one that
I break that one all the time.
I've heard. Well, because it's hard not to when you're on a one-way trail.
You're being respectful of the trail and you're staying on the trail. It's a little hard to do that one.
I guess it's also worth noting that their beliefs being as hard-held and as deeply ingrained as they tend to be, especially here in this part of the world, there is no amount of podcasting, even having had these conversations that you're going to be hearing later in this episode with bona fide experts, legitimate experts in their fields. I am sure that there are people who are going to hear this and say, yeah, but I know that what I saw or what my neighbor saw or what my granny said that she saw or heard. I understand that I'm not going to convince anybody. So just try and set that aside and just enjoy hearing wildlife experts lend their expertise to the conversation and then take from that what you will, I guess.
Consider it a possible explanation for what you experienced in the woods.
Sure. Maybe it'll give you a sense of comfort. Maybe you'll not feel nearly as unnerved as you might otherwise be prone to feel. But that's the hope. All right. So to begin with, there are 4 animal myths we're going to be talking about in the course of this discussion. And I think to get into it, let's start with one that we get calls about all the time here at the aquarium, and that's that someone has found an alligator snapping turtle in their backyard or pond. And then they usually ask us, what should I do next, or do you want it? So, Rachel, have you ever heard anybody say anything or heard reports from anybody along those lines about them having found an alligator snapping turtle in their backyard here in Southeast Tennessee?
Yes. I will say that most where I grew up in Virginia, it was just snapping turtle. But a lot of people didn't realize that there are different species of snapping turtles out there. And then as I moved to Chattanooga, I definitely hear alligator snapping turtle a lot more frequently.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and punt this to the segment that I recorded with our lead herpetologist and see what he has to say. To bunk or debunk, I guess, the myth of whether or not you can find an alligator snapping turtle here in southern Appalachia, I have carried the equipment for the studio dive cage all the way to the River Journey building to a tiny little triangle closet that is masquerading as an office for one Bill Hughes, who is our herpetology collection coordinator. Bill, first of all, thanks for joining us on the podcast. But also, can we find alligator snapping turtles here? Are they here, as all the rumors and tall tales would suggest, or are they not?
Officially, they're not here. And so, tall tales. There are common snappers here. I'm looking at a U.S. Fish and Wildlife range map with locality data. And the closest ones to us, there's some just to the west of Nashville, not Knoxville. And it appears that there's some in the Atlanta area, but nowhere on this map is there a spot anywhere near us.
So that would be west of us, so the middle part of Tennessee, if you're not up on your Tennessee geography, and then Atlanta's about 100 miles south of us.
Yes, a little bit north of Birmingham, too. So when you look at the map, there's actually like a little bit of a indentation where we are. So like they're officially not here. That said, it's possible you might find one. There are various records around the country for people finding them. There's actually a one I was looking at last night. They found one in the reservoir in California a few years ago. It's considered a potentially invasive species in California, so they didn't want it in the reservoir. So I think they just got it out. But how did it get there? It probably didn't occur there naturally. Well, it didn't occur there naturally. Someone got it possibly as a hatchling, took it home. At some point realized this is indeed the largest freshwater turtle in North America. Why is it in my bathtub? And then decided perhaps the reservoir was a more fitting home for it. So I think that there's two things happening here. I think what's happening is occasionally people might actually find one out of their natural range because it's a cool turtle. Babies are super cute, but again, gets really big. At some point, it's no longer super cute. It's a liability and not legal. But that aside, at some point, you're going to find ones that have been moved outside their natural range by humans. The other thing is, in all the years I've been here, we get calls about snapping turtles all the time. And interestingly enough, we never get calls about common snapping turtles, which have an insane range when you look at them. They're basically in the U.S. east of the Rockies, and they go up into Canada. They go all the way everywhere. And they really are everywhere. And not just their name is common, they are common. They're a real easy turtle to find. I see them on roads a lot. Females will be out cruising, looking for a place to nest. I find babies on roads. They like to move. But no one ever calls about those. They always call because they have an alligator snapper. And not to be skeptical of that, but they never turn out to be alligator snappers. So I think it's this thing, and it shouldn't be, that somehow alligator snappers are cooler than common snappers.
I was about to say, I think it's mostly, I think they're like metal and an interesting species, and
yes,
they want it to be.
It's an interesting species. It's a better story. They're really distinctive turtles when you look at them. The alligator snapper has these 3 giant keels down the back, even as babies. The common snappers have not a smooth shell, but they don't have those keels.
So when you say keel, they're like spiked ridges.
Spiked ridges. And last night, as I told Casey earlier, I was reading a book on alligator snappers. Well, I'm reading the only book I know of on alligator snappers that's several decades old, but it did have a section on why do they have the ridges, and apparently alligator snappers sometimes eat other alligator snappers, especially smaller ones, and the ridges they thought are an adaptation to kind of prevent that from happening.
Whoa! So is it the case that I know from a couple of other stories that we've done and interviews I've done with other specialists that those spikes tend to kind of wear down and become less pronounced over time. Is that what usually happens with alligator snappers too?
I think really old ones it does, but I feel like, before they get into their, later in life, youngsters, young adults still have them. They're really prominent. It's not something, it's not a characteristic you would go, I didn't see it. It's real obvious. Mm-hmm. It's real obvious, especially when you have one, a common snapper and a alligator snapper side by side. There's no mistake.
They look very different, for sure.
And behaviorally, they're different. Alligator snappers, I suspect, don't come out of the water very much. Females will come out and nest, but they're not as prone to crossing roads randomly like snapping turtles. Because I feel like every year on my drive home, I rescue one or two, sometimes babies, sometimes bigger ones. They're never appreciative when you try to pick them up. They musk you to try to bite you. They never say, hey, thanks for getting me off this road. And that's okay. I understand. But
and we also on the podcast Aquatic love our scientific vocabulary. And you came across while you were doing some research for this a new favorite word. So what is that favorite word?
That word, which I will reveal in a moment, was unknown to me yesterday. My old favorite word for a long time has been caruncle, which is the proper name for an egg tooth on a turtle. And I try to say caruncle as many times as I can during the day, caruncle. But while reading this dated but only book available on alligator snappers, as some people know, it's like inside the alligator snapper's mouth. These guys are sit and wait predators. They sit on the bottom. They're kind of camouflaged. They open their mouth. They have a little worm-like appendage that sticks out from their tongue, and they wiggle it. And they don't. That's another difference between them and alligators or common snappers. They don't strike. They wait for the fish to come in and then to investigate the worm, and they close it. But
they're lazy.
That worm-shaped appendage, if you really want it to be technical, and who doesn't, you can call it vermiform, which means shaped like a worm.
I do love that. That's a pretty good word.
It is a good word.
And how many points would that be worth on Scrabble? You couldn't do it in one turn. It's 8 letters.
You could sneak up on form and just sweep the board.
That's true. That would be worth quite a few points, I think.
Yeah.
V's and F's, those are good ones. M's are good too. All right. So anyway, you mentioned a couple times that they're large, right? So they're the largest freshwater turtle in North America. How big do they get?
There's a lot of debate about that. I think there's records of 400-pounders, but they're
400 pounds.
They're questionable. It's like from the olden days, like maybe 1900s. Yeah, 1900s, early 20th century.
Wow.
I think, am I reading the largest one, like verifiable, was about 250.
Yeah, that's a big turtle.
Which is a big turtle. But that, because it can get that big doesn't mean it gets that big. So I think they're adults. I think females don't get as big as males. A big female nowadays might be 30 to 50 pounds, 30 to 60 pounds. A male, 100, 120 is a big male.
Wow.
It's still a big turtle.
So,
but 400 pounds, I'd like to see that. But if it ever existed, they don't get that big anymore.
Jeez. I mean, you'll know, I guess, by the wave that it creates in the swamp when it moves through.
If you do see a 400-pound turtle crossing the road in the Chattanooga area, and it's not a tortoise of some kind, then it's probably an alligator snapper. I'll throw that out there.
Man. So if you are a longtime fan of the aquarium and visited maybe a couple of years ago, you might remember that we had a male alligator snapping turtle that was a really big boy. I called him the king of the swamp. He was indisputably, I think, our largest non-sea turtle in the building. I think his weight when he died was 165, 170 pounds.
Yeah.
He was big. He was a big, big guy.
Yeah.
Do you have many memories of working with him, or was that mostly... So Jennifer McFeeters, who is our lead animal care specialist for this building, the River Journey building, used to care for him. Did you have much involvement in his
I've had
care?
Interactions with him over my tenure here. Yeah, he's a big turtle. He's very impressive.
And you look
and remarkably calm, because I guess that's the thing. That's one thing between alligator snappers and common snappers. Alligator snappers are much easier to wrangle, despite the size. They're just not. They're not as snappy. That's a horrible thing to say, but and it's what I said earlier. It's like the feeding mechanism. Alligator snappers, when they feed, open their mouths and wait for the food to come in. common snappers grab it really fast. And that kind of behavior rolls over into defensive behavior. Like I said, when you pick them up off the road, they musk you. If you pick them up safely, which means stay away from the head, they're still randomly kind of striking back as far as they can. So I was going to say that too. If you do pick one off the road, it's not really great for the turtle to pick it up by the tail, especially a big one. I mean, that's a lot of weight, and it's all on those vertebrae in the tail. The safest way, if you can do it, to pick it up is pretend you're picking up, somebody told me this recently, it's not my metaphor, is pick it up like a hamburger. Pick it up on the sides, keep your hands back, watch out for the claws, but, keep your hands back. But, that way you're supporting the turtle physically and I guess emotionally as well if you're taking it off the road. But, don't pick it up by the tail.
Okay.
It seems, if you think about it, it's a lot of weight, and it's like that tail's not meant, it's not a possum. It's not meant to hang by the tail. It's like, that's a lot of weight on those vertebrae. So pick it up like a hamburger.
Okay.
Don't get bit. If you can't do that, leave it alone.
Let's talk about the bite, because there's that rumor that goes around online about the fact that an alligator snapping turtle can bite clean through your digits, can bite your arm off, can bite a broom handle. I mean, how strong is their bite force?
I don't know. I was reading the book about that last night, and it mentioned lots of anecdotal information, including trials by the author to test the broomstick hypothesis. And it seems that he said that a large alligator snapper, they went and got a broom from a grocery store. This book was written in 89, so some of it might be, dated scientific methods. But take the broomstick handle, try to get the snapping turtle to bite it. They said little ones couldn't do much. Big ones would leave a good-sized dent in it. And that's wood, so your fingers may not resist as much. None of them actually broke it. The biggest one, I don't know how big the biggest ones they had were, but they said none of them broke it, but they dented it. But they also said, curiously enough, they don't seem to like to bite things that are hard. So they seem to learn really quick. It's like get them to bite the broomstick handle. The first time they would bite it, and then go, oh, let's try it again. And at some point they would kind of not try to bite it.
It's that's not food.
It's not food. It's not pleasant to bite it. So they're not out there lurking, waiting for fingers or toes or to bite off. But it's still a big turtle like that. That thing has a hard beak. It's got some force.
So don't find out.
Just don't.
Please, if you're out there in the podcast Aquanaut Corps, don't try and fill in the holes in our understanding of the bite force of alligator snapping turtles through personal experience.
And anecdotally, I was going to say that I had a friend that in grad school worked on bite force in turtles, and I remember him telling me this several times, the undeniable winner, and it blew alligator snappers out of the water, was a giant musk turtle from Central America, which looks like a common musk turtle on steroids. They're just big. But it's interesting because he said that whatever research they were doing, they had a bite force gauge meter, and the giant musk turtle had the honor of being the only turtle that broke it when it bit.
Wow.
But there's a reason for that, because those guys in the wild eat other turtles. So they need that crunching ability.
Got it.
But the alligator snapper wasn't.
So if you're a turtle, don't trust a musk turtle?
Giant musk
turtle. Okay. Words to live by.
Yes.
All right. Well, sounds like this is a myth that's been more or less debunked. So it's a case of if you saw, quote unquote, an alligator snapping turtle in your backyard here in Chattanooga, it's probably mistaken identity, I guess.
Yeah. Common snappers are arguably just as cool, and you're more likely to see them. So make the most of it.
All right. Yeah, it's one of those things that just comes down to the unfortunate naming of species by taxonomists that make them sound less interesting. Just because they're common doesn't mean that they're basic.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. Bill, thank you so much for your expertise, and we will carry on with our animal myth busting with not sure what we'll do next. The Tennessee Aquarium's podcast Aquatic is made possible by support from the Tennessee Conservationist, the official magazine of Tennessee State Parks. Each issue is filled with fascinating stories about Tennessee's native species, rich history, and unique culture. It's also your guide to exploring state parks and planning your next outdoor adventure. Subscribe today at tnconservationist.org. And we're back. Rachel, first of all, when you were out in the woods growing up, did you ever hear the call of a mountain lion or hear other people tell you that they heard or saw a mountain lion in Appalachia?
100%. My dad, actually, all the men in my family hunt, but when my dad would go, every now and then he would have a report of him or a buddy or somebody swore they saw a mountain lion. And like, they know what a bobcat looks like, right? So I would be like, you mean a bobcat? No, not a bobcat. This was big. And it had a long tail. So, and this is farther north, farther up Appalachia in Virginia. So not in the Bristol area, but, up in the, not too far away from like Shenandoah area.
The real mountains, not like we've got down here.
Right. So yes, definitely have heard mountain lions in Virginia, and the Virginia, Wildlife Agency would say, no, we don't have mountain lions. We do not have mountain lions in Virginia. You didn't see that. And the hunters would be like, yeah, I did.
or rather, yeah, Yeah, growing up in Knoxville, would frequently go out to visit family in Roane County in Kingston, which is on basically the western edge of the valley, the Tennessee Valley that we are currently in here in Chattanooga, and Knoxville also is up in the northern edge. And my brother and I would spend a lot of time playing out in the woods, and we were always admonished, don't go too far out because them thar hills have mountain lions or cougars or pumas.
Whatever. We always said mountain lion.
We always said mountain lion too, but they have a lot of different names.
They do
It kind of
names.
depends on where you're talking about.
Yeah.
And we'll get into that when we get into the next segment with our next expert. But our next expert also he does double duty actually today. Another animal that is frequently, quote, seen in this part of the state, which is the water moccasin or the
cottonmouth.
Or the cottonmouth. So have you ever personally seen a water moccasin or a cottonmouth in a Tennessee waterway? And if not, have you heard of anybody else who says they have?
Well, by golly, I sure thought I did. But I have heard several people, my cousin got bit by a cottonmouth. And, we saw a cottonmouth over there. Water moccasins were at the, lake, whatever. So, when you grow up around water and you grow up around a lot of people who are afraid of snakes, their go-to story is cottonmouth, water moccasin.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of water here in East Tennessee. I mean, I grew up fishing basically every Saturday with my dad, and my brother and I would go take the boat or just go and drive his truck out into the woods to lakes near Knoxville and go swim and jump off of cliffs into water that we probably shouldn't have been jumping off into. And we were encouraged not to do that because that water was teeming with water moccasins. And you were running the risk of a serious, painful, possibly deadly bite if you did not steer clear of those waterways. So,
did you ever see them yourself?
No. I mean, you will see snakes on the water. I get into this with our curator of forest, who's going to be handling the expertise of this next segment. You see a water snake in this part of the state, and because of these stories, the immediate knee-jerk reaction is water moccasin.
Mm-hmm. Danger.
Exactly. And there is some truth or some, I guess, logic behind the fact that these myths haven't quite died down, that these rumors and legends have not quite died down, because as you and I were talking about before, again, the mic started rolling, some of these myths actually are really just admonitions to behave in a way that is safe.
Right. If you scare your kids from getting into the water, then they won't, be in the water unsupervised. They won't be in a dangerous situation where there could be potential drowning or whatever. There won't be horseplay in the
Jumping
creek.
into too shallow of water.
Yeah. So if you tell them there's a dangerous snake that could bite them and kill them in the water, then your kids probably aren't going to go plunging into the lake without you.
Yeah. And when you're a 7 or 8 year old kid with his 9-year-old or 10-year-old brother, who has basically free range of this massive property, most of which is wooded, telling them don't go too far away from the house that you can't see the lights because a mountain lion might get you. just telling them that is a way to keep them close at hand and easily rescuable in the case of them doing something that they shouldn't, which we definitely were up to.
It was pretty effective.
So anyway, we will, I guess, punch this now to, again, our curator of forest, who does double duty handling the discussion of whether or not you actually did see or hear a mountain lion here in East Tennessee, or whether you did actually see a water moccasin or cottonmouth in the waters around you here in East Tennessee. Kevin, let's start with the water moccasin, also known as the cottonmouth, right? So people use both of those names.
Right.
Tell us about this snake. How big does it get? Where does it live? What kinds of things does it eat?
Water moccasins, or they're also called cottonmouths because inside their mouth lining is white. They're pretty widespread with the coastal plains starting from North Carolina all the way down to Texas. They're not an uncommon snake, particularly in Florida. They have a triangular head and the cat or slit pupil, and they're heavy-bodied snake, much like a copperhead is. They get much larger than a copperhead. They are more. Their venom is more potent. Also, they have a necrotic tissue hemolytic venom, and they're actually quite belligerent snakes too.
Belligerent, so
as they're kind of bullheaded snakes. Most water snakes would take off in the water when they see you, but sometimes water moccasins will just stay to see what you're going to do. Most of the times they'll leave, but I look for them on roads. Sometimes I have to get them off the roads because they won't leave. I've seen them striking at cars as they go by. So they're
really
bulldogs, and they're tough. I love them. I think they're awesome snakes. They smell like cucumbers.
Like
you
cucumbers?
can smell them. Yeah, you can smell them on the road. Sometimes I can smell them, and my equipment smells like cucumbers. I get done with them.
Okay, so the warning is don't go near them.
Right.
Don't swim in the lakes or rivers. Are they? So they're found in water, on water, around water?
Well, they are mostly found close to water, and they're excellent swimmers. They eat mostly fish, but they can eat snakes, lizards, mammals. They'll eat pretty much anything with their mouths on, but mostly fish.
Okay. How big do they get?
They can get 40 inches long. They can get pretty good size, and very heavy-bodied snakes.
Okay.
So but they can be all different colors too. They can be almost black. They can be all brown, but they can have a pattern, kind of an hourglass pattern, kind of like a copperhead has.
Okay.
And the young ones are beautiful. They look very copperheadish in that they have a pretty strong hourglass pattern, but they're more of a yellowish brown than they are more of a golden yellow like copperheads are. And when they're little, they have a yellow tail, just like a copperhead does, and they use it for a lure. They'll actually move their tail around, try to draw prey into them when they're juveniles. They get closer to to strike at. So, yeah, they're a mythological snake that they actually deserve some of their they can be considered deadly or dangerous. I should say deadly, but they have big heads and they have quite a bit of venom, which, like I said, is much more potent than copperhead venom is.
And it sounds like, based on what you said, that their personality is such that there's the likelihood of there being that kind of negative interaction if you do encounter one.
Sure, yeah.
But the reason this is a myth, I guess, though, is that they're not found here.
They are not found in southeast Tennessee at all. South of us, the closest, if you look at iNaturalist, which is an online natural, it has ranges and locations people have spotted animals. It's very interesting. It gives you exact locations where animals are spotted. If you look at iNaturalist, it shows Huntsville, Alabama, southern Scottsboro County in Alabama, over towards Decatur, you start getting into their range. Also, in Tennessee, they are in Tennessee, but they're in West Tennessee, starting with Ashland City, which is, northwest of Nashville, has a pretty good density of water moccasins. So if you go basically from Nashville west to the Mississippi River is their range. So they are close to here, but there's never been a sighting that I know of in East Tennessee. There's nothing. Hamilton County, Marion County, Sequatchie, Bledsoe, none of those counties have had any records that I've ever heard of that were confirmed records.
Sure. So why not then?
Well, it may have to. I don't really know that. It may be temperatures. They do tend to be more of a warm weather animal. They tend to like sandier soils. So our soil may not be what they like here, but not completely sure why. but they tend to be in the swamps of Florida, Georgia. That's where their main density is, in Alabama and Texas. And they're not an uncommon snake, by the way. They're quite common.
Okay. So you've heard this rumor, though.
Oh, of course. And what's confusing, the species, the common water snake, is well named. It's very common, and it's a harmless snake, non-venomous snake. It's found in the water. It's found on the edges of rivers, streams, big lakes. It's a very common snake, and they can be quite large, and they do have a variable color pattern to them. They can have kind of a patchy orangish color. That's their main color on their back, is kind of a patchy orangish patches on their back. But their head is not shaped like, and I hate to use a diamondback thing, but water moccasins really do have that triangular head that people think about with rattlesnakes and so on. And the common water snake does not. It has kind of a garter snake head. It's got kind of a longish head. Also, both the copperhead and the water moccasin have pits, heat-seeking pits in front of their faces. So those are pretty obvious in a water moccasin.
Yeah.
Also, they're very heavy-bodied, and they tend to be very large snakes. So the common water snake can be quite large, and they can be all brown. I've seen ones that were really dark brown that were adults that look pretty large. But the whole head shape and so on, the head is the same width as the neck. With the water moccasin, the head is much larger than the neck. So you immediately see that and say, okay, that is not a common water snake.
Yeah. But I guess there's a tendency, I guess, if you've grown up with these old wives' tales about there being water moccasins and you've been told this is a dangerous snake.
Right.
I guess there's probably a lot of likelihood of there being a lot of water snakes that wish that this rumor didn't exist because they probably have fallen victim to mistaken identity and probably been killed.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. Fortunately, their populations are doing really well. I mean, I could take you, that's the one snake I could take you right now to see one. At least 80 or 90%. That's hard to say with any snake species, but there's places where along the creeks and ponds, I know they always are.
Yeah.
So they are, and they are widespread too, all the way up to the Canadian border. Actually, they go into Canada too, all the way down to here. So they're a very widespread snake. Yeah. They're a very pretty snake too. But they are belligerent also. Water snakes tend to be aggressive. I think that's because they eat mostly fish. And if you're a fish eater, you have to be very aware and alert snake. Mm-hmm. So they tend to bite if you pick them up. It's harmless, but they tend to bite.
Yeah.
And snake bites do bleed because their teeth are they're oriented towards the back of their mouths to hold on to slippery things. So snake bites can bleed.
Yeah.
But they don't really hurt. I don't know if I've ever had it actually hurt, but they are also belligerent snakes.
Well, and I've said this now, it feels like ad nauseum on this show that I say it to my kids too, that if you're going to look at something, look with your eyes, not with your hands.
Yeah, and that's how most people get bitten by any snake of picking the snake up. And with water snakes, I don't pick them up either because I know I'm going to get bitten. They will bite you.
Well, they're a very pretty snake.
They're beautiful snakes.
They're the one that I think I probably encountered the most too out in the wild. So I would like to see, I guess, or smell a water moccasin. I didn't know about that cucumber thing. Yeah. But I would love to see one from afar. I don't know that I want to get close enough to touch one.
Very attractive snake. And occasionally copperheads who looks they are closely related. And they can be found, especially in fast-moving rivers and the Smokies and stuff. You will see them along the edges of the creek or river, but they're not. I've never seen them acting like a water snake, where they're half in the water. I'm not saying they don't, but they can be found at the edges of lakes and streams and so on too.
So, well, before we move on to mountain lions, we should probably talk about what are the venomous snakes you can actually see in this part of the state, just so people have an idea of the ones that are reliably found in this part of the country.
The northern copperhead is by far the most common venomous snake in Hamilton County in the southeast Tennessee, and it likes many different habitats, but really it likes the ridges, the forest and the ridges, like Signal and Lookout the most, and they are. Mostly, they'll eat your chipmunks. They eat a lot of mammals that we would like them to eat. But they'll eat, most of those snakes will eat whether they can get their mouths on, if that's bird eggs or whatever they can find. But they do eat a lot of mammals. So they're good to have around. They're beautiful snakes, too. They're really attractive snakes. And they do hunt in the summertime. They'll hunt mostly at night. Don't walk around barefoot on Signal Mountain at night in the summer. They are active at night on those ridges. So. But the bite is quite. They aren't. Don't have not. They have. Their heads are not near as large as a water moccasin, so they can't hold as much venom. And their venom is quite mild, but you don't always know how that venom is going to react to your body, how your body's going to react to it. So it's not a bite you ignore, but fatalities are very, very, very rare with a copperhead.
Okay. Well, what other species?
So we also have the timber rattlesnake, which fortunately is a very passive snake because they are quite venomous. They have their venom is a hemolytic venom that kills flesh on contact. And, I get a lot of reports, not a lot, but reports every year on trails, particularly up in the ridges, once again, Signal, Etna Mountain, Raccoon Mountain, mostly in those areas. And they used to be on Lookout. I've seen them on Lookout, but it's been several years. But that's where they're the most common. But sometimes I've seen them had reports even down the valleys some. They used to live down the valleys at one time. So they are, they can get up to 4 feet long. They're a heavy body. They're a rattlesnake. They have a rattle. So they're pretty easy to tell what they are. And they do not want to confront you. They're not like a water moccasin. They don't want to stay and fight. They want to leave or they want to be messed with. Fortunately, because they are quite venomous. Mm-hmm. They can be different colors too. They can be both black, they can be green, they can be gray. They're a really pretty snake. I mean, I think they're one of my favorite rattlesnakes in the United States. But are they common? I haven't seen one this year. I've been out looking for them. The Cherhawa Skyway over in Monroe County is a classic place for them in the summertime. I haven't seen one yet. So anyway, they're not always an easy snake to find.
And then is there one more venomous snake?
Well,
I always heard Eastern Diamondback was the other one.
Eastern Diamondbacks are South Georgia down. But there's the pygmy rattlesnake is found in land between the lakes. So it's northeast of Nashville. I've never seen one. I mean, they're incredibly rare in that habitat. But there are records of them in that right up on the Kentucky border in that area about Paris Landing and that part of Tennessee.
Okay.
But they're really rare. I don't personally know anybody's actually seen one, but there's records of them.
Well, speaking of seeing one,
yes.
Let's move on to mountain lions because you and I were talking a little bit before the mics were turned on, and I went into this fully expecting this to be an Appalachian myth busted, but there may be more truth to the rumors of there being mountain lions or reports of mountain lions in East Tennessee than I thought. So before we get too into it, let's do the same thing we did with the cottonmouth and talk about their natural history. So what are mountain lions? How big do they get? Where do they live? What kinds of things do they eat?
Well, there's 3 races of mountain lions. There's the Florida panther, which is South Florida, which does not get out of Florida. There's not a lot of them left, but they are native to that area. And there was the eastern mountain lion. People call them cougars, mountain lions, catamounts. They have many different names. I call them mountain lions. I think that's the most acceptable.
That's what I grew up calling them.
Right. And they look lion-like? Somewhat. I mean, they're a brown, big cat. They can be from 40 pounds to 250 pounds.
Holy cow.
And they have a very long they're a brown felid, a brown cat, and they have a very long tail, so they're not hard to identify. I mean, we have bobcats here, but they get up to 35 pounds, but they're much smaller. They have spots, and they have a bobtail. It's
like
about
a big Maine Coon.
Right, exactly. So they're actually tougher than mountain lions, I hear. But anyway, but mountain lions are actually distinctive. They look like a big, giant brown cat, and they're slinky. They don't want to be seen. You've heard about them out west in L.A. and some of those areas where they can be quite cosmopolitan, and their ranges sometimes do extend down into places that are a little bit more densely populated. So I've been hearing about mountain lions since I moved here in the 90s, and I was very skeptical. The eastern cougar was extirpated or wiped out from hunting around 1900, just like the elk was. And it's been declared extinct. So the eastern cougar has been declared extinct. So 2 things. People do to keep mountain lions as pets, believe it or not. They are like a big cat. They're like a big kitty. They're not particularly aggressive. They tame down really quickly, actually. I shouldn't say they're not aggressive. They have attacked and killed people, but that's actually quite rare. Anyway, so for years I kept hearing people say, "Oh, my friend saw a mountain lion." It's always my uncle's aunt's nephew who saw it.
Yeah.
But in 2015, TWRA announced that there's been enough trail cams around. There's at least 10 sightings they had confirmed of mountain lions in people's backyards, mostly West Tennessee, which would make more sense because there's western mountain lions their population is exploding. So they're found west of the Mississippi River, much more common in West Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, Colorado, and California. They're actually quite common in those areas, and their populations are doing well. I think hunting all across the United States, people just don't hunt as much as they used to. So I think mountain lions aren't hunted as much as they were, and their populations are doing really well. So the theory is that they're western cougars, and I think genetically somehow TWRA has determined this. I'm not sure how that happened, where they get the DNA from that. Maybe the scat or the droppings. But they're thinking it is the western cougar has come in. Very few, by the way. I've never seen one.
I mean, you said 10 sightings in the last 10 years.
But that was the reports I saw ended in 2016, so I'm not sure if that means that I was talking to a friend of mine last week, and they said, my neighbor had a mountain lion, come through their yard last evening. It's like, I don't know what to do with that.
Yeah. How do you respond to this as somebody who's more of an expert than this?
Big brown cat, very long tail, really huge. It's like, okay. So, but there is proof of it happening. And obviously, they're not real common. I mean, I've only seen one in my whole life in Arizona. It was one of my top 10 wildlife moments of my life. They're spectacular animals. They really are. But
how close were you?
I was in my car, fortunately, but about 10 feet.
Oh,
a
wow.
big male came up, looked me in the eye, and with big yellow eyes. And my camera's next to me, but I was in so much shock I couldn't even pick it up. And he just bounded off. And so he was spectacular. They're a beautiful animal. There's only been about 100 confirmed attacks of mountain lion. Well, over the last 100 years or so, they don't commonly attack people. Now they have, but they're not there's a lot more bear attacks than there are mountain lions.
Sure.
I'm not saying run up to them and try to pet them or anything, but they are not just an animal that hunts people down.
Yeah. So the sightings then would imply that these are just like passing through. There's not an established population. I'm
not sure of that. I mean, the TWR website says there's possible breeding.
Really?
So they're very vague, and I haven't talked to the officers. I know some of them. Maybe I should talk to them also. But it sounds like maybe they're more than passing through.
Huh.
Yeah, but it would make more sense if they were in the Smoky Mountains, which is a vast forest area that has lots of deer, lots of things for them to feed on. I would think that would be much better habitat than having them around here.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't see mountain
neighborhoods
lion.
in Hamilton County.
Right. I think you're right. Probably if they are here, they're probably passing through, or they're not staying around here. But like I've never seen it's all my nephew, niece's aunt that saw it, and the people I talked to have never actually seen one themselves. And they say it's on their trail cam, but I never see pictures.
So
it's like, yeah.
So I mean, I guess with the proliferation of like ring cams and trail cams, like you just mentioned, are we collecting more data than in the past about these kinds of things?
Oh, for sure.
Okay, so is that making it easier to confirm these myths that have persisted for decades?
I think it does, and people just like to have trail cams in their backyard. They want to see how many deer are coming in, or they want to see if a coyote. And bears have been not so much in Hamilton County this year, but they've been all over Tennessee this year. So people put trail cams trying to get a bear that might pass through their backyard too. So a lot more. They're certainly a lot less expensive and easy to use than they used to be, and they're actually have pretty good resolution. There's some really nice and you're right. The ring cams have picked up all kinds of stuff through the years. Interesting, weird stuff.
Yeah.
If you want to go to Halloween stuff, yeah. So, but they've picked up some weird stuff. So, but I think there's no doubt that they have picked up. I don't know if there's been a ring cams picked up a mountain lion in Tennessee. I haven't heard of that, but I don't know.
Well, there's your homework, members of the podcast Aquanaut Corps. If you're out there listening, maybe do some internet research, some sleuthing, and send me an email if you find some verifiable report, like confirmable evidence. Then I'll pass it on to Kevin, and we can.
I would love to see one. I would I spent a lot of time out looking for animals and birds and snakes, and I've never seen one. But I hardly ever see bobcats either. I see one a year probably.
Well, I think so there's something to the fact that these, you mentioned them being big cats, and we talk all the time about, especially here at the aquarium where we work so often with, I'm looking at a picture of a brook trout's not a great example, but we work with a lot of smaller fish that are difficult to get people to care about because they're not what we within the zoo and aquarium industry call a charismatic megafauna.
Right.
And I think there's something about that is almost wistful about mountain lions and wanting them to be around because we're attracted to these larger, furry, charismatic animals. And so in my mind, as much as there was a don't go in the woods because they're dangerous, there's also kind of almost a sense of pride, like we've got this animal, this big, beautiful animal in the woods of our home. Like there's like I always struck me as there being kind of, and for me too, like I share your desire. I would love to see a mountain lion in the woods from a safe distance and preferably with my kids, maybe not necessarily with me, but I would love to see one too. And if the reports that you're talking about are accurate, maybe there's more of a possibility of that than I really thought there would be before I walked into your office with these mics.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting, and there's always these black panther sightings too, which, what does that mean? I mean, I've heard that forever. A giant black, so I don't know what that is. I was extremely skeptical of that, so I'm not sure what that means. But I know a couple people that actually had neighbors that had a mountain lion living in their house as a pet, and I was skeptical until they showed me a picture of them sitting with a mountain lion. So okay, I'm not sure how you'd fake that, but it's so people.
I don't know. AI is pretty good these days.
Yeah, and people do keep them, and of course, would they let it go? I hope not. I mean, my guess is they probably won't do that well in the wild.
There's your sightings. That's where they came from.
Yeah,
they're
exactly.
Domesticated mountain lions that people have released into the wild.
It's possible that there's been escapes from somewhere. I mean, I don't know, but it sounds more likely to me that it is a western species just kind of expanding its range. We call it. With birds, they do that too. Some birds expand the range. Their populations are doing really well, and they don't have room anymore for where they were. They just keep moving outwardly until they get to a comfortable spot. So my guess is mountain lions will never be common in Tennessee, but it seems like they're here.
I mean,
so yeah, I'm surprised myself that there's actually data backing that up, because for years I know people say, there's no mountain lions.
It was just rumors. It was your neighbor's uncle.
Exactly.
Solomon.
Yeah.
Well, that is fascinating, Kevin. I think we can call this one myth busted and one half confirmed.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's interesting, and I will go ahead and move on to the next myth in this episode. But Kevin, thanks so much for your time and your expertise.
It's fun.
For our last segment, Rachel, you are a fish expert yourself. You have lent you're an aquatic life expert.
Okay.
It's in your title, assistant curator.
There's
of
just
fishes.
so much more to learn that it doesn't feel like expertise.
You're more of an expert than I am.
Okay.
Let's say, which is true for sure. So I'm positive you've heard this one growing up. But did you realize that the waters below the dams here in East Tennessee, and there are a lot of dams, thank you to TVA for keeping us flood-free and full of cheap electricity for as long as you have. But those waters below those dams are actually home to enormous catfish, gigantic ones, maybe even the size of a Volkswagen Beetle.
Yeah, I can take you right where he is, too. I know exactly where to find him.
So putting on your aquatic life expert hat for a moment, it can be a knit cap if you want.
Okay. My toboggan.
Do you give any credence to those tales? Do you think that there actually are, or what does your ichthyological instinct tell you about the legitimacy of those reports?
I think that there is a long, revered history of anglers lying about the size of their catch.
Big fish stories, you mean?
Yeah, I do mean big fish stories. And yeah, some species of catfish get really, really big, but I have yet to see one the size of a Volkswagen.
Yeah.
So jury's still out on that for me.
Me too. And I guess we'll go ahead and let our aquatic conservation biologist, Dr. Bernie Kahida, handle this one for us in our final segment. So, Bernie, is there any truth at all to there being giant Volkswagen bug-sized catfish at the bottom of the lakes and rivers here in East Tennessee?
We do have really big catfish in Tennessee. The blue catfish is the biggest one. You can get 5.5 feet long, about 120 pounds. But that ain't no Volkswagen.
That'd be a pretty small bug.
That would be. Our next biggest fish, the flathead catfish, about 5 feet and 80 pounds here in Tennessee. So it's not even close to a Volkswagen. I really wish it was, but I've traveled the country collecting fishes, and anywhere in the Midwest or the eastern United States, from the Ozarks to New England, down to Florida, and everywhere in between, anytime someone finds out in the hotel or a restaurant that I'm a fish biologist and ichthyologist, they always say, hey, have you heard about, or is it true about those Volkswagen-sized catfish at the bottom of the dam? I heard that they sent divers down there to look for cracks in the dam, which I'm not sure technically that's how you check the stability of a dam, but okay. And this one diver, he thought he was on the bottom. He was looking around, and all of a sudden the bottom moved, and it was a giant catfish the size of a Volkswagen. And he got so scared he died of a heart attack. So how you know that when the dude's dead, I don't know, but it's a great story.
I mean, it does say something that people approach it with some skepticism, that they're asking the question because it does sound pretty unrealistic. I'm a little disappointed that it's not a myth that's specific to Appalachia. I really thought this was one of the ones that we could say was homegrown, but it's really more widespread than that.
It really is. And this morning I just looked up the length of a Volkswagen Beetle, and it's 13 feet.
So that's so that would be a very big catfish. Are there any catfish that do get anywhere close to that? Because I know that you said the largest catfish here in Tennessee is the blue catfish, but I mean, there are bigger catfish elsewhere in the world.
There are, and the Mekong giant catfish found in Thailand and Laos and Vietnam, Southeast Asia, it can get 9 feet long and 650 pounds.
That's pretty
huge.
big.
Now, if you do have a dive mask on, there's about a 25 to 30% magnification in that air to water interface through your mask. So if you have a 9-foot long fish, that's going to get you almost 12 feet with that magnification. So now, lengthwise, you are seeing a Volkswagen Beetle. For a 5.5-foot fish, that'd be just over 7 feet with the magnification. But remember, that is like the state record in Tennessee. That is the largest blue catfish. Most of the blue catfish out there, they're going to be 3-4 feet long and, 50 to 80 pounds. And so you're going to have to use some serious imagination to get a Volkswagen Beetle out of that. But it is a great story.
But why is it catfish? I mean, of all the animals that they could say are that get that big, why would it be catfish that they're finding?
I think it's because catfish are so robust compared to a lot of other fishes. Like the largest fish in Tennessee is the alligator gar, which can get up to 10 feet long and over 300 pounds.
Now that I did not know.
So can be a huge fish. But once again, it's really long. And now a 300-pound alligator gar is going to be big around, but these big catfish, they're kind of short and stubby and tall, and robust like a Volkswagen Beetle. So I get the analogy in the shape.
Yeah. I'm guessing the marketing department must just be like banging their heads against the wall that they've got this bad association with these enormous monster catfish. Like, why Volkswagen of all the car makes that they could have chosen?
I don't know, but I remember commercials from the 70s, I think, where they were advertising that Volkswagens are airtight and they would drive them into pools and they would float. So, I don't know, maybe seeing Volkswagens splashing around in pools way back in the day had something to do with Volkswagens on the bottom of the river comparing to catfish?
I guess.
I don't know. I think it's just the shape of these really big catfish. They do get a huge girth. They get really rotund. And I think back in the day, a Volkswagen Beetle is the similar shape.
Okay. And what are they eating? So catfish, we've already talked about the fact that they are on the bottom. So presumably they are eating things on the bottom. What are they eating? What's their diet?
Anything they can fit in their mouth.
Oh, well, that actually makes them spookier than I thought.
Yes. Now, our catfish do not have teeth. They've got these big grinding plates, and to catch the fish or the invertebrates or the, I don't know, small mammals. Let's say that. I don't know if that's true, but that is a good story. And they swallow most of their food items whole. They just use that to grab them and get them swallowed. But really, fish is probably the main diet of these larger catfish.
It's not the first time I've heard someone refer to that part of a fish's anatomy as a grinding plate, but it always feels very industrial to describe them that way. So they're grinding plates? Are they? What does that look like, and how does that work?
So it's just the lower jaw and the upper jaw. They've got a flat area that's a little rough, and it's bone. And so instead of relying on teeth to grab prey and to maybe tear a part out of it, think of sharks, they just grab the prey and then slowly work it in and swallow it. And a lot of these fish, their mouths are so big, this is not only catfish, it's largemouth bass, a lot of fishes, that when they open up their mouth quickly, there's actually a negative pressure, and they suck the water and any fish in that water, any prey item, into their mouths, and then they can swallow it. So a lot of times they don't even need those grinding plates or, jaws to grab and slowly eat something. They just suck it in.
So it's like kind of a Jonah and the whale situation.
Yeah, exactly.
Man. Okay, well, that's a myth down and busted. So, in fact, no matter what your grandpappy might have told you about there being giant catfish at the bottom of the river near a dam, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, I guess, there are not giant catfish the size of Volkswagen bugs at the bottom of the river. But there are big catfish.
There are big catfish, and let's not forget, we can't see what's hidden underneath the surface of the water. And it's not necessarily monsters, but it is an underwater rainforest of incredible aquatic biodiversity here in Tennessee. We have 335 different kinds of fishes. Not all catfishes, but some of the smaller fishes we have are catfishes. There's this thing called a mad tom catfish. Mad tom, like an angry male cat. And some of these mad tom catfishes, they only get 3 or 4 inches long. They are little miniature catfish. So catfish can be adorably cute also.
And venomous, right?
Yes, they do have poison cells in the skin that covers their spines on the side of their body and those 2 fins and the fin on top of their back. And it feels like a bee stung you if you get poked by one of those spines. And I have been poked numerous times.
Well, at least it wasn't by a Volkswagen-sized catfish, which, as we have already established, not a real thing. Bernie, moving on back to the studio dive cage to wrap things up with the episode. But thank you for busting the myth of giant VW-sized catfish at the bottom of lakes and rivers here in East Tennessee.
No problem, but it is a great story.
All right, well, that is a lot of myths, both busted and not quite confirmed, but like sideways confirmed.
Yeah.
I certainly learned a lot, and you have not had the benefit of listening to these segments yet, so you will learn too when you listen to this episode.
I will learn, and I still want to know if that red bird is my grandpa.
We should do another. We should make this a series because there are enough animal myths in Appalachia that I think we could probably, or woods wisdom. We could talk about plants, all kinds of stuff. I think we could bring it back. In fact, I even workshopped a theme song for a potential series called Appalachian Animal Mythbusters. And I haven't quite decided whether or not I'm going to use it with this episode. But if you heard a song leading into this episode, then I did. And if not, then I'm going to edit this part out. Anyway, Rachel, thank you for joining us here in the studio dive cage and lending your Appalachian expertise to the conversation. I love talking to you, and I love being just gabbing about Appalachia, because I think we're both very passionate about being from this part of the country and love the vibe here and the deep history and the weird beliefs and legends.
Yeah, we're cut from the same cloth, and we've known that for a while. And I also love being back in Appalachia and being around more Appalachian folk like yourself.
True facts. Well, I'm glad that we had a chance to handle this topic. It's one I've been excited about covering for a long time, and we'll go ahead and wrap it up here. But thank you again for your time and your expertise.
You're welcome.
All right, if you have an idea for a future episode of the Podcast Aquatic, or a follow-up episode perhaps to the series to be called Appalachian Animal Mythbusters that I haven't quite decided whether I'm going to make an actual series or not, do send it along to podcast@tnaqua.org. While you're online, go ahead and write us a review or leave us a rating. Those are free and easy ways to support the show by giving us better play with the algorithm, which lets more people hear us and learn about legends of Appalachia, as well as other things about the many, many thousands of animals that live here at the Tennessee Aquarium, as well as the work that we're doing out in the wild to protect those same animals and their wild cousins. And in the meantime, until next time, remember that every drop matters.